They killed Big Bertha. That 8-pound bass came to my dock every morning for 3 years. I named her, fed her, watched her grow. Now she's floating belly up with 200 other fish because my HOA president thinks she owns my lake. The chemical stench burned my nostrils at sunrise, sharp copper sulfate mixed with rotting scales. Vivian Blackwater had dumped $3,500 of industrial algaseed into my crystal-clear water overnight, turning it the color of antifreeze. I stood there holding Bertha's slimy, lifeless body, shaking with pure rage. Then I realized something absolutely beautiful. Vivian's fancy subdivision gets their drinking water from the same underground spring that feeds my lake. Every drop, every house, 847 homes. She didn't just poison my fish. She poisoned her entire neighborhood. And she has no clue what's about to hit her. Ever had neighbors who thought they could destroy your property just because they didn't like what you were doing? Tell me where you're watching from. And if you've got an HOA nightmare story, drop it below because this one's about to get wild. My name's Marcus Reed. At 52, I never thought I'd be at war with a woman who probably spends more on her manicures than I make in a week. But that's suburbia for you. I'm a retired electrician turned solar panel installer here in Pine Ridge, North Carolina. The kind of guy who fixes things with his hands and believes people should mind their own damn business. My 12-acre property with its spring-fed lake has been in my family since 1952, back when this whole area was tobacco fields and common sense. Every morning I walk that gravel path my grandfather laid, boots crunching on stones worn smooth by decades of fishermen. The dock planks feel warm and weathered under my hands. That sweet honeysuckle smell mixes with the clean mineral scent of spring water. Blue herons nest in the cypress trees. Base jump at dawn. And for 70 years, this place has been pure peace. Then the developers showed up. 15 years ago, they bought everything around me and built Willow Creek Estates. 847 McMansions starting at $600,000 each. They offered me millions to sell, wanted my lake for their country club. I told them they could take their money and build a clubhouse in hell. Most of the new neighbors were fine. Normal people who waved when they jogged past, maybe asked about the fishing. But then Vivian Blackwater moved in. Picture this, 47 years old, drives a white Lexus that's detailed more often than most people shower, and carries a leather portfolio to neighborhood barbecues. She talks like a lawyer even when ordering coffee, throws around phrases like property value optimization and aesthetic compliance standards. The kind of person who probably schedules her bathroom breaks. Vivian appointed herself HOA president within 6 months and immediately launched her enhancement campaigns, which is fancy talk for making everyone miserable until they bow to her suburban dictatorship. Her opening shot came 3 months after she moved in. Certified mail, official letterhead, the whole production. My unsightly fishing activities were apparently disturbing her peaceful enjoyment of the neighborhood. $800,000 she paid for that lakefront view, and watching me catch dinner was somehow ruining her investment. The legal threats escalated fast. She claimed my dock violated aesthetic covenants that were supposed to apply to all area properties. The woman actually had the nerve to demand I tear down a structure that's been here since before she was born. I called my buddy Tom Martinez, real estate lawyer who's saved my ass more than once. He nearly choked on his coffee laughing. Marcus, property that predates HOA establishment cannot be subject to retroactive covenants. She's threatening you with laws that don't exist. Knowledge nugget. If your property existed before an HOA was formed, their rules generally can't be applied to your land retroactively. Your deed date is your legal shield. When intimidation failed, Vivian filed a false complaint with the county about my illegal dock structure. Poor inspector drove out here, looked at my 1987 permits, and apologized for wasting his time. That's when she revealed her true nature. Every morning, I'd head down to fish at 6 a.m. when the bass are feeding, and suddenly Vivian needed emergency landscaping. Leaf blowers, chainsaws, industrial mowers, all screaming at maximum volume right along her property line. The diesel fumes would drift across my lake, mixing with honeysuckle and turning my peaceful morning into something that smelled like a highway construction zone. But I kept fishing. Some principles are worth defending, even against suburban tyrants with too much money and too little sense. I had no idea that Vivian was just getting warmed up, and I definitely didn't know she was crazy enough to commit environmental terrorism to get her way. 2 weeks after the county inspector laughed at her illegal dock complaint, Vivian hired the most expensive surveyor in 3 counties to verify our property boundaries. Not because there was any question, my grandfather marked those lines with concrete posts that'll probably outlast civilization itself. This was pure harassment with a professional invoice. 3 days later, Vivian's lawyer sent me a registered letter claiming my dock extended exactly 6 inches onto community water rights. 6 whole inches on a lake that's been in my family since before she was born. But here's where Vivian really showed her true colors. She filed an actual lawsuit in county court for property encroachment. Professional letterhead, court stamps, filing fees that probably cost more than most people's car payments. All over 6 inches of dock space. While her legal papers crawled through the system, she launched a Facebook campaign that would make a political operative jealous. Posted in the Willow Creek Estates group about her difficult neighbor who was refusing to respect community standards. The comments section turned into a digital lynch mob faster than you could say property values. But 2 can play the research game. I spent my weekend in the county courthouse basement, breathing dust that was probably older than Vivian's entire career, digging through deed records and property transfers. Sometimes the best revenge is just knowing more than your enemy. And holy hell did I hit the jackpot. My grandfather didn't just own the land. He owned exclusive water rights to the entire lake system. Every drop, every fish, every damn molecule of H2O. The original 1952 deed specifically included all water rights, surface and subsurface, including natural springs and tributaries thereto. But here's the beautiful part that made me laugh so hard I nearly fell off my chair. The lake is spring-fed from an underground aquifer that extends directly under Vivian's precious subdivision. Legally speaking, every time her neighbors flush their toilets, they're using my water. Knowledge nugget. Water rights often transfer separately from land ownership and are recorded in property deeds. These rights can be worth more than the land itself. I called Tom Martinez with my discovery. After he stopped cackling like a madman, he said, "Marcus, you don't just have a defense. You've got a nuclear weapon disguised as a property deed." So we filed a countersuit for harassment, slander, and abusive legal process. But the timing, that was pure poetry. Vivian was hosting one of her fancy backyard dinner parties. 40-plus HOA residents standing around with wine glasses complaining about their property taxes while eating food that cost more per bite than most people spend on lunch. Right in the middle of Vivian's speech about maintaining community standards, our sheriff's deputy walked through her back gate. "Ma'am, I need to serve you with some legal documents." 40 conversations stopped mid-sentence. Vivian's perfectly manicured hands trembled reading the papers. Her foundation couldn't hide how pale she went when she realized what she was holding. "This is harassment," she shrieked loud enough to rattle windows. "That redneck is trying to intimidate me with frivolous lawsuits." And there it was. The mask slipped completely. The refined real estate attorney became just another suburban tyrant having a nuclear meltdown because someone dared fight back. Her dinner guests suddenly remembered urgent appointments. Amazing how fast rich people can evacuate when someone starts screaming about rednecks at a catered party. But Vivian wasn't done. The next morning, I found an anonymous note under my windshield wiper. "Stop fishing or face the consequences." Apparently, public humiliation just made her more dangerous. Within a week of my countersuit, I had more government inspectors crawling over my property than a meth lab bust. Fish and Wildlife showed up first, claiming they needed to investigate potential disruption to migratory bird patterns caused by my fishing activities. I'm not making this up. This woman actually convinced a federal agency that me catching bass was somehow screwing with duck GPS systems. The EPA inspector arrived next, armed with water testing kits and a clipboard thicker than Vivian's legal bills. Apparently, my private lake usage might be creating environmental hazards. The sweet irony of that accusation would hit me like a freight train later. Each inspector found exactly what you'd expect from the cleanest lake in 3 counties. Absolutely nothing wrong. But bureaucratic harassment is a two-way street, and I was about to learn how to drive it. Dolores Martinez, 68-year-old retired county clerk with a memory like a steel trap, dropped a bombshell over coffee. "Marcus, that whole subdivision was built on protected wetlands. Developer got his permits by promising to preserve all natural water features forever. It's federal law." Knowledge nugget. Development permits often contain perpetual preservation clauses that legally bind all future property owners. Violating these environmental restrictions can trigger massive federal penalties. I spent the next weekend playing environmental detective. Vivian's landscaping contractor, the same diesel-belching crew that had been serenading my fishing trips, was using my lake as their personal garbage dump. Grass clippings, hedge trimmings, fertilizer-soaked debris, all of it flowing directly into federally protected wetlands. I became an environmental paparazzi, hiding in the tree line with my camera every Saturday morning at dawn. Third Saturday in a row, I caught them dumping organic waste straight into my water. The photos were gorgeous, time-stamped, GPS-located, high-resolution evidence of federal crimes happening in broad daylight. But the real jackpot came when I ran their license through the state database. Pristine Landscaping LLC was 40% owned by Richard Blackwater, Vivian's husband. The EPA doesn't just love environmental violations with photo evidence. They absolutely worship them when they're connected to harassment campaigns. I filed my complaint Monday morning with a smile that could have powered half the county. By Wednesday, Pristine Landscaping was under federal investigation. Richard lost 3 county contracts by Friday. The sound of Vivian's perfectly controlled world starting to crack was sweeter than church bells on Sunday morning. But if I thought environmental violations would humble her, I was about to learn just how spectacularly wrong one person can be. The morning I found the Algaseed Company's business card tucked under my windshield wiper, I knew we'd crossed the line from legal warfare into something much darker. Environmental terrorism was apparently Vivian's next play. Too bad she didn't realize she was about to poison her own drinking water. While I was out of town visiting Sandra's sister in Charlotte, Vivian was busy researching algae management solutions like she was preparing for environmental warfare. She found Clearwater Solutions, a commercial algaseed company that specializes in industrial-strength pond treatments, the kind of chemicals that can sterilize a lake faster than you can say property values. Here's where Vivian's lawyer brain really shined. She called Clearwater and lied through her perfectly veneered teeth, claiming my lake was community property experiencing a dangerous algae bloom that threatened public health. $3,500 in cash, paid up front, for a midnight chemical assault on what she told them was an emergency environmental situation. I came home Sunday evening to the smell hitting me before I even stepped out of my truck. That sharp metallic stench of copper sulfate mixed with mass death. The lake water had turned an unnatural blue-green color, like antifreeze mixed with apocalypse. Big Bertha was floating 20 feet from the dock, her massive body already bloated in the contaminated water. 3 years of morning feedings, watching her grow from decent-sized base into a lake legend. And now she was just another casualty in Vivian's suburban genocide. 200 other fish floated alongside her. Bluegill, crappie, catfish. An entire ecosystem assassinated overnight because one woman couldn't stand watching someone enjoy their own damn property. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone. The county environmental emergency hotline connected me to Officer Jim Patterson, who'd been investigating illegal dumping for 15 years. When I described the aquatic crime scene, his voice shifted from routine bureaucrat to DEFCON 1. Don't touch anything, keep pets away, and don't disturb the evidence. I'm bringing the hazmat team. Patterson arrived with water analysis equipment that looked like it belonged on Mars. The test strips turned colors that don't exist in nature, deep blues and purples screaming massive chemical contamination. Industrial-strength copper sulfate poisoning, he said, his voice tight with professional fury. Whoever did this didn't just kill your fish. They sterilized the entire ecosystem for 2 to 3 years minimum. This is felony destruction of property, possibly federal environmental terrorism. Knowledge nugget. Illegal dumping of industrial chemicals on private property constitutes felony destruction in most states and triggers federal environmental crime charges carrying 5 to 10-year prison sentences. But Patterson wasn't done playing detective. While I stood there holding a garbage bag that used to be my fishing paradise, he was reviewing security footage from Mrs. Henderson's doorbell camera across the street. The video was crystal clear. Clearwater Solutions truck arriving at 2:17 a.m. 2 figures in protective suits dumping death directly into my lake, vanishing by 2:43 a.m. 26 minutes to destroy 70 years of family heritage. That evening, I sat on my dock holding one of the smaller dead bass, remembering my grandfather teaching me to cast in this exact spot. The silence was absolutely deafening. No birds, no insects, no life around water that used to bubble with activity. But grief sharpens focus like nothing else. As we filled garbage bag after garbage bag with Vivian's victims, my electrician brain started connecting dots. I'd installed solar panels on dozens of houses in this subdivision. I knew their utility systems intimately. Every house in Willow Creek Estates uses well water pumped from the same underground spring system that feeds my lake. The same aquifer, the same water source, the same copper sulfate contamination now flowing through limestone channels toward 847 unsuspecting homes. I had my water tested the next morning by an independent lab. The results made my blood run cold. Copper sulfate levels 4 times higher than EPA safe drinking water standards. Vivian hadn't just poisoned my lake. She'd contaminated her entire neighborhood's water supply. Every faucet, every shower, every ice cube maker in that pristine subdivision was now serving up industrial toxins. The woman who spent months bitching about my unsightly fishing activities had just turned her perfect community into a toxic waste site. And she was about to drink her own poison. Monday morning, I drove back to the county courthouse basement, that special kind of government purgatory that smells like old paper, dust mites, and crushed dreams. The original deed transfer from 1952 was buried under decades of irrelevant paperwork. My fingers were black with archival dust when I finally found it. Then I hit the paragraph that made my heart stop, including all water rights, surface and subsurface to underground spring system and tributaries thereto, in perpetuity. In perpetuity, Latin for forever and ever. My grandfather hadn't just bought land. He'd bought every drop of water flowing through the underground spring system extending for miles beneath what would eventually become Vivian's precious subdivision. I pulled the Willow Creek Estates development records from 2008. The developer's water usage permit application claimed they'd be drilling independent wells with sustainable water sources. Independent wells that tap directly into my grandfather's spring system 400 feet downstream from my lake. Every single one of them. The developer never purchased water rights because he probably didn't even know they existed as a separate asset. Most people don't. Knowledge nugget. Water rights are completely separate from land ownership and must be explicitly transferred. Failure to secure these rights can expose developers and homeowners to massive legal liability and usage fees. For 15 years, 847 families had been using my water without permission, without compensation, and without even knowing their most hated neighbor literally owned every drop flowing from their taps. The math alone made my head spin. Average household water usage times 847 homes times 15 years times market rate for water rights. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in back payments. I could legally demand. But the contamination angle, that was the diamond sitting on top of this legal gold mine. Every home in that subdivision was now drinking water poisoned by Vivian's midnight chemical warfare. I called Tom Martinez from the parking lot. Tom, I don't just own the lake. I own their entire water supply. Every drop they've used for 15 years is legally mine. The silence stretched so long I checked if my phone had died. Marcus, he finally whispered, you're not defending against a property dispute anymore. You're sitting on the biggest water rights case this state has ever seen. And if that contamination spreads through the aquifer. He didn't finish. We both knew Vivian had poisoned 847 homes using water that belonged to me. When you discover you're sitting on a legal nuclear weapon, you don't just start swinging it around. You assemble a team of highly trained assassins who know exactly where to aim. First call went to Rebecca Torres, environmental lawyer out of Raleigh who'd built her career destroying corporations that thought poisoning communities was just good business. Water rights violation, environmental contamination, public health emergency, she said, eyes gleaming as she reviewed my documents. Marcus, this isn't a lawsuit. This is a masterclass in legal warfare that'll be taught in law schools for decades. Rebecca's strategy was beautiful. Hit them from every direction simultaneously before they even know they're under attack. Federal lawsuit for water rights theft. EPA emergency intervention for contamination. State criminal charges for illegal dumping. Civil suits for property damage, emotional distress, and punitive damages that would make a lottery winner blush. Second recruit was Dr. James Mitchell, hydrogeologist from North Carolina State, who makes opposing lawyers weep during depositions. He spent 4 hours taking samples and mapping the underground spring system. Single-source spring feeding directly into residential wells, he said. Contamination will reach every home within 6 to 8 weeks. We're looking at 800 to 1,000 affected properties. Third team member was Sarah Morgan, investigative journalist who'd spent 3 years taking down corrupt HOAs. When she saw my evidence, she looked like a kid on Christmas morning. This is Pulitzer-level material, she said. Power-drunk HOA tyrant poisons entire neighborhood while terrorizing the guy who legally owns their water supply. CNN will fight MSNBC for first interview rights. We offer settlement, Rebecca proposed. Waive all back payments for 3 things. Complete lake restoration, Vivian's resignation, plus criminal prosecution and permanent oversight preventing future abuse. The plan was elegant. Hit Vivian with federal charges, state charges, civil liability, and national media exposure simultaneously. Give the innocent homeowners a path forward that didn't bankrupt them. Force accountability without collective punishment. Vivian discovered the water contamination exactly the way karma intended, through her neighbors' complaints about the metallic taste in their morning coffee. Within a week of poisoning my lake, the Willow Creek Estates Facebook group exploded with posts about weird-tasting water and strange smells from the taps. Parents complained their kids were getting stomach aches. Vivian immediately went into damage control mode, posting an official HOA statement claiming the taste was natural mineral deposits and seasonal changes in groundwater composition. But desperate people do desperate things. Vivian contacted Clearwater Solutions and tried to bribe the owner into destroying their service records. Offered him $10,000 cash to lose any documentation of their midnight lake treatment. What Vivian didn't know was that the owner, Derek Thompson, recorded their entire conversation. Legal warning. Attempting to destroy evidence or bribe witnesses transforms misdemeanor charges into felony obstruction of justice. The cover-up is often worse than the crime. Meanwhile, the community health crisis was getting worse. A pediatrician in town noticed a spike in childhood stomach problems among kids from Willow Creek Estates, symptoms consistent with heavy metal poisoning. The HOA board started receiving dozens of complaints about water quality. People were buying bottled water in bulk. Some families installed expensive filtration systems. Vivian's response: blame aging infrastructure and announce a special assessment of $500 per household for emergency water system upgrades. She was literally charging people to fix the problem she'd created. The board meeting was spectacular. 80 angry homeowners packed into the community center. Parents stood up demanding answers, showing medical bills, threatening lawsuits. 3 board members confronted her after the meeting, demanding to know about the mysterious $3,500 landscaping expense from the HOA budget last month. Vivian refused to provide receipts and threatened to sue any board member who questioned her financial decisions. That's when board member Patricia Morgan started doing her own investigation into HOA finances. Turns out using community funds to poison a neighbor's property counts as embezzlement under North Carolina law. I received one final threatening phone call that week. Drop the lawsuit or you'll regret it. The voice was disguised, but the desperation underneath was unmistakable. My response was simple: I'll see you in court. Vivian's final gambit started with a neighborhood-wide defamation campaign. She created 3 fake Facebook accounts and flooded the Willow Creek Estates group with posts about my illegal activities. According to Vivian's digital puppets, I was an environmental terrorist who deliberately contaminated my own lake to frame the HOA and extort money from innocent families. The smear campaign worked on some people. I started getting hostile stares at the grocery store. 2 solar installation clients canceled contracts. Someone spray-painted "liar" on my truck in the Walmart parking lot. But Vivian's desperation was about to lead her into truly stupid territory. She showed up at my house on a Thursday evening, dressed in casual clothes instead of her usual power suit, carrying a leather briefcase. "Marcus, I think we can resolve this like reasonable adults," she said, opening the briefcase to reveal neat stacks of $100 bills. $100,000 cash to drop all legal action and sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. What Vivian didn't know was that I was wearing a wire. Tom Martinez had suggested it, and I'd gotten very comfortable with the little recording device taped to my chest. You're offering me money to cover up the fact that you poisoned my lake and contaminated your neighborhood's water supply? I asked, making sure the wire caught every word. I'm offering you a reasonable settlement to resolve a property dispute, she said. Good faith gesture? Is that what we're calling attempted bribery now? Her face went from fake friendly to ice cold in about 2 seconds. You're going to regret this, Marcus. I have connections in this county that will destroy you. I'll take my chances, I said. Now get off my property before I add trespassing to the list of charges. The EPA issued a public health advisory recommending Willow Creek residents avoid drinking tap water until further notice. Property values started dropping immediately. Vivian's psychological breakdown was becoming visible to everyone. Her husband Richard moved out, taking their 2 kids and filing for separation. The HOA board finally voted to remove her as president after discovering she'd used community funds for the algaseed, the PI, and multiple other personal vendetta expenses. Everything Vivian had built, her social standing, her marriage, her position of power, was collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. The Pine Ridge Community Center hadn't seen a crowd like this since the county tried raising property taxes. Standing room only, 300 people crammed into space for 200. TV news crews set up cameras. County sheriff positioned deputies near exits. EPA representatives sat front row with official badges and grim expressions. Vivian sat on stage with remaining HOA board members. Designer suit perfect, makeup flawless, but her eyes had that cornered animal look. Patricia Morgan, the new board president, called the meeting to order. We're here to address water quality concerns and discuss EPA findings. The crowd erupted. Parents shouted about sick children. Someone yelled about property values dropping $40,000 in 2 weeks. Dr. Sandra Murphy from the EPA displayed water testing results on the projector, bright red numbers showing copper sulfate levels 4 times above safe standards. Contamination originated from industrial algaseed dumping here, she said, laser pointer highlighting my lake. Chemicals entered groundwater and spread throughout the spring feeding. Your wells. Who dumped the chemicals? Someone shouted. Dr. Murphy looked directly at Vivian. That's a matter for ongoing criminal investigation. 300 heads turned to stare at Vivian. I walked to the microphone. Most of you know me as the difficult neighbor who wouldn't stop fishing. Vivian Blackwater spent months trying to drive me off my property through lawsuits, harassment, and eventually environmental terrorism. That's slander. Vivian shot up. Sit down, Mrs. Blackwater, the sheriff's deputy ordered. I held up my grandfather's 1952 deed. This document includes one specific paragraph I want to read. All water rights, surface and subsurface to underground spring system and tributaries thereto, in perpetuity. Silence except for the projector hum. In plain English, I own the water rights to the entire aquifer feeding this subdivision. Every drop from your taps for 15 years legally belongs to me. The developer never purchased these rights. Confused shouting erupted. I'm not here to bankrupt anyone. I'm waiving all back payments. About $30 million you won't owe me. Relief washed over faces. But Vivian Blackwater poisoned my lake with industrial chemicals, destroying 70 years of family heritage and contaminating water that belongs to me. Then she covered it up while your children got sick. Rebecca stood. Mrs. Blackwater faces federal environmental destruction charges, state illegal dumping and embezzlement charges, and civil property damage charges. We have video evidence, recorded bribery attempts, and documentation of her using HOA funds for personal vendettas. The deputy walked toward the stage. Vivian went ghost white. This is a setup. He contaminated his own lake to frame me. Ma'am, I have an arrest warrant for environmental crimes and obstruction of justice. The room exploded as the deputy handcuffed her. You'll all regret this, she shrieked. I'll sue every one of you. That redneck is manipulating you. Final mask gone. Pure rage and classism on display for 300 witnesses and 3 cameras. As she was escorted out, I returned to the microphone. I'm proposing a settlement protecting everyone here. Full environmental restoration funded by insurance, and Mrs. Blackwater's restitution, no back payments for water usage, and independent oversight to prevent future abuse. The crowd's anger shifted to cautious hope. 6 months after Vivian's arrest, I stood on my dock at sunrise, watching native base fingerlings get released into the lake. Water crystal clear again. Dr. Mitchell's restoration plan worked better than predicted. The Grandfather's Lake Environmental Trust became something bigger than I imagined. Settlement funds, $250,000 from Vivian's assets and HOA insurance, created an environmental education program. Local schools bring kids out twice monthly to learn about aquatic ecosystems. Vivian's legal aftermath was exactly what she deserved. Federal environmental destruction, state illegal dumping, embezzlement, obstruction of justice. She pleaded guilty to everything. 3 years federal prison, 5 years probation, $75,000 in restitution, 200 hours cleaning waterways after release. Her husband divorced her. Real estate law license permanently revoked. She lost everything trying to destroy one man who just wanted to fish in peace. Willow Creek Estates underwent its own transformation. New HOA board implemented transparency policies requiring homeowner vote approval for financial decisions. The twist nobody saw coming? I opened my lake for community fishing. Every Saturday morning, families from the subdivision fish under proper environmental management. Kids who'd never held fishing rods learned to cast from the same dock where my grandfather taught me. This year's festival drew 500 people, proceeds funding local water conservation. Sandra and I still sit on that old dock, most evenings watching base jump at sunset. Children's laughter from the fishing program mixes with birds' song and gentle splashing. This place feels alive again. Our legal case set precedent. 3 other North Carolina water rights cases cited our settlement as a model. Environmental law students study how we used leverage for restoration rather than destruction. HOA reform legislation passed the state Senate last month inspired by Vivian's abuse. New laws require financial transparency, limit HOA authority over pre-existing properties, and establish penalties for harassment. My solar business expanded into environmental restoration projects. Fighting an HOA tyrant and winning makes great marketing. Here's what I learned. Never let petty tyrants make you abandon principles. Document everything. Know your rights. Sometimes the best way to defeat enemies isn't destruction, it's building something better from their mistakes. Your turn. Have you dealt with HOA nightmares or property rights violations? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else facing similar battles. If this story of standing up to petty tyrants and protecting our environment inspired you, hit that subscribe button. Next week, the city councilman who tried stealing a veteran's land through eminent domain abuse until the veteran discovered the councilman's own property violations. Remember, whether you're in North Carolina, Texas, California, or anywhere else dealing with power-hungry HOAs, you're not alone. Communities are stronger than tyrants. Truth is more powerful than corruption. And sometimes one person standing up for what's right changes everything. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and protect what's yours.